Greetings and welcome back to Mythic Memoirs, where we bring you the most fascinating and bone-chilling true crime stories from around the world. As always, we've scoured the archives to bring you a tale that will leave you on the edge of your seat, so sit back, relax, and get ready to be transported into the dark and twisted world of true crime. The murder of JonBenét Ramsey was a case that captivated the nation. The 6-year-old beauty queen was found dead in her family's Colorado home on December 26, 1996. The case remains unsolved to this day, and has left many unanswered questions about who was responsible for her death. In the following chapters, we will explore the investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's murder, and the complex web of evidence, theories, and suspects that emerged in the aftermath of her death. From the initial crime scene investigation to the intense media scrutiny that followed, we will delve into the twists and turns of the case and the impact it had on the Ramsey family and the public at large. We will examine the potential suspects in the case, including the Ramsey family themselves, as well as other individuals who came under suspicion over the years. We will also explore the role that the media played in shaping the public's perception of the case, and how the intense scrutiny affected the investigation and those involved. Ultimately, the murder of JonBenét Ramsey remains an unsolved mystery, but the legacy of the case endures. It continues to capture the public's imagination and raise questions about justice, media sensationalism, and the limits of law enforcement. Join us as we delve into the case and explore the lasting impact of one of America's most haunting unsolved murders. On December 26, 1996, the nation was shocked by the news of a brutal murder in Boulder, Colorado. The victim was 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey, a beauty pageant queen who had been found dead in her family's home. The crime scene was puzzling. The child had been strangled, and her body showed signs of sexual assault. The evidence suggested that the killer had taken great care to cover their tracks. The Ramsey family had just returned home from a Christmas party the night before when they found a ransom note on the staircase demanding $118,000 for the safe return of JonBenét. The note was unusual, with odd wording and strange demands. Despite the ransom note, the body of the young girl was found later that day in the basement of the family's home. The investigation into JonBenét's murder began immediately, with the Boulder Police Department and the FBI working together to try and identify the killer. But the case would prove to be one of the most complex and controversial investigations in American history. From the outset, the police and the media focused their attention on the Ramsey family as possible suspects, and the investigation quickly became a media frenzy. The public was outraged by the senseless killing of a young child, and speculation about the killer's identity was rampant. The case would become one of the most talked about crimes of the 20th century, with everyone from armchair detectives to experienced law enforcement officials weighing in on the investigation. In the following chapters, we will delve into the details of the JonBenét Ramsey murder case and the investigation that followed. We will examine the evidence, explore the suspects, and try to unravel the mystery of who killed this innocent child. And we will see how, more than 2 decades later, the case remains unsolved, leaving the family and the nation with lingering questions and a sense of unfinished justice. On December 26, 1996, the Boulder, Colorado Police Department received a frantic 911 call from Patsy Ramsey, reporting that her 6-year-old daughter, JonBenét, was missing. A ransom note was found demanding $118,000 for JonBenét's safe return. However, hours later, JonBenét's body was found in the basement of her family's home. She had been beaten and strangled. The investigation into JonBenét's murder began immediately. The Boulder Police Department initially focused on the possibility of an intruder, as there were signs of forced entry into the home. However, suspicions quickly turned to the family, specifically JonBenét's parents, John and Patsy Ramsey. The Ramseys were cooperative with the police at first, but as the investigation continued, they became increasingly hostile towards law enforcement. They refused to be interviewed separately and hired a team of lawyers to represent them. In addition, they did not agree to take a lie detector test. Despite the initial suspicion of an intruder, the evidence at the crime scene pointed to someone inside the house being responsible for JonBenét's death. The ransom note was found to have been written on a notepad belonging to Patsy Ramsey, and handwriting analysis suggested that she may have been the author. Furthermore, the pineapple found in JonBenét's stomach was not part of the dinner that the family had on the night of the murder, leading investigators to believe that JonBenét had been fed the pineapple by someone in the house after they had gone to bed. The investigation into JonBenét's murder would become one of the most high-profile cases in American history, but despite numerous leads and suspects over the years, the case remains unsolved to this day. The JonBenét Ramsey case quickly became a media sensation, with news outlets across the country reporting on the tragic story of a young girl found murdered in her own home. The case captured the attention of the nation, and the media coverage surrounding it only grew more intense as the investigation continued. As the investigation into JonBenét's murder began, the media descended on Boulder, Colorado, where the Ramsey family lived. Reporters and photographers camped outside the family's home, hoping to get a glimpse of any new developments in the case. News outlets broadcasted updates on the case around the clock, with experts and pundits weighing in on the latest developments. The media frenzy intensified when a letter purportedly written by JonBenét's killer was discovered. The letter, which contained disturbing and graphic details about the murder, was sent to the Ramsey home and was eventually made public by the media. The letter sparked even more speculation about the case and fueled the public's interest in the investigation. As the investigation continued, the media began to scrutinize the Ramsey family and their behavior in the aftermath of JonBenét's murder. The family's public appearances and interviews were dissected and analyzed, with some commentators suggesting that they seemed too composed or evasive. The media also focused on the family's wealth and social status, leading some to speculate that they were receiving special treatment from law enforcement. The media coverage of the JonBenét Ramsey case was relentless, with new details and rumors emerging almost daily. The case became a topic of conversation across the country, with everyone from armchair detectives to legal experts weighing in on the investigation. In the next chapter, we will explore the impact that the media had on the JonBenét Ramsey case, and how their coverage of the investigation shaped public perception of the case and the parties involved. As the investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's murder continued, a number of potential suspects emerged. The first person of interest was John and Patsy Ramsey themselves. Many believed that the parents may have been involved in their daughter's death, either accidentally or intentionally. The ransom note found at the scene of the crime was also scrutinized, as some investigators believed it had been written by Patsy. However, the Ramseys maintained their innocence and no concrete evidence linking them to the crime was found. In fact, DNA evidence found on JonBenét's clothing and body did not match anyone in the Ramsey family. Another suspect was their 26-year-old housekeeper, Linda Hoffman Pugh. She had been recently fired and was upset with the family. She also had a key to the house and may have had access to the ransom note paper. However, no evidence linked her to the murder and she was eventually cleared as a suspect. Other potential suspects included a former teacher of JonBenét's who was obsessed with her, a sex offender who lived nearby, and even Santa Claus performers who had interacted with JonBenét in the weeks leading up to her death. However, none of these individuals were definitively linked to the crime. The investigation into the suspects continued for years, but ultimately, no one was charged with the murder of JonBenét Ramsey. The case remains unsolved to this day. After months of investigation, a grand jury was convened to determine if there was enough evidence to indict anyone in the death of JonBenét Ramsey. The jury heard from dozens of witnesses and examined physical evidence, including the ransom note and the rope used to strangle JonBenét. Despite the mountain of evidence, the grand jury failed to indict anyone in the case. This was a major blow to investigators who had worked tirelessly to solve the case. Many people were left wondering how such a high-profile case could go unsolved. The decision not to indict anyone in the case only fueled speculation and theories about who could have killed JonBenét. The media coverage continued to be intense, and the Ramseys found themselves at the center of a storm of suspicion and criticism. The lack of an indictment also had a significant impact on the investigation itself. It was a setback for the Boulder Police Department, which had been criticized for its handling of the case. Many felt that the grand jury's decision was a sign that the investigation had been mishandled from the beginning. Despite the frustration and disappointment, the investigation into JonBenét's death continued. The Boulder Police Department and the District Attorney's Office vowed to keep working on the case until justice was served. But as time passed, it seemed less and less likely that the killer would ever be brought to justice. On the 26th of December, 1996, the world was shocked by the news of the murder of 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey in her family home in Boulder, Colorado. The case quickly gained international attention, and the investigation into her death became one of the most high-profile in American history. In this chapter, we will explore the aftermath of the grand jury and the investigation into JonBenét Ramsey's murder, and how the case remains unsolved to this day. Despite the grand jury's indictment of John and Patsy Ramsey in 1999, no arrests were ever made in connection to JonBenét's death. The Ramseys vehemently denied any involvement, and the case remained at a standstill for several years. In 2002, new DNA evidence was found that did not match any of the Ramsey family members. The DNA was found on JonBenét's underwear and on the waistband of her long johns, suggesting that it was left by the perpetrator. However, this evidence has yet to lead to a conclusive identification of the killer. Over the years, numerous suspects have been considered and cleared, including family friends, acquaintances, and even members of JonBenét's own family. The case has also been the subject of numerous conspiracy theories, with some suggesting that the Ramsey family was involved in a cover-up. In 2016, the Boulder Police Department announced that they would be using new DNA technology to re-examine the evidence in the case. While the investigation is ongoing, no significant breakthroughs have been made in recent years. The unsolved nature of the case has left many questions unanswered, and has led to widespread speculation and debate. The tragedy of JonBenét's death continues to captivate the public, and the search for justice for this innocent child remains ongoing. In the final chapter of this series, we will explore the impact of JonBenét Ramsey's murder on society and on the way crimes are investigated and reported in the media. The JonBenét Ramsey murder case continues to be one of the most high-profile unsolved cases in American history. The investigation has been marked by missteps, controversies, and false leads. Despite numerous suspects and potential motives being investigated over the years, the case remains unsolved. The case has had a lasting impact on law enforcement and the media. The intense media coverage, fueled by the glamour and beauty of the young victim, sparked a new era of sensationalist news coverage. The case also prompted changes in how law enforcement handles high-profile cases and media relations. The Ramsey family has also been forever changed by the tragedy. They have been subjected to immense scrutiny, suspicion, and accusations over the years. Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, passed away from cancer in 2006, never seeing justice served for her daughter. John Ramsey, JonBenét's father, has continued to advocate for justice for his daughter and has worked to clear his family's name. In recent years, there have been renewed efforts to solve the case. New DNA evidence has been discovered and new suspects have been investigated. However, the case remains unsolved, and the identity of JonBenét's killer remains a mystery. The legacy of the JonBenét Ramsey murder case serves as a reminder of the dangers of sensationalist media coverage and the importance of thorough, unbiased investigations. The tragic loss of JonBenét continues to haunt her family, law enforcement, and the public, and the hope for justice for her remains elusive. The murder of JonBenét Ramsey remains one of the most baffling unsolved cases in American history. Despite numerous investigations, extensive media coverage, and countless suspects, the truth behind the 6-year-old beauty queen's death remains elusive. The case has left a lasting impact on those involved, from the investigators who dedicated years of their lives to solving the crime to the Ramsey family who have endured decades of speculation and accusations. While there have been no major breakthroughs in the case in recent years, the legacy of JonBenét Ramsey lives on. Her tragic death continues to serve as a reminder of the dangers of media sensationalism, the importance of thorough investigations, and the lasting impact of unsolved crimes on the families and communities left behind. As we continue to seek answers and justice for JonBenét, we must also strive to learn from the mistakes of the past and work towards a future where all victims of crime are given the justice they deserve. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the tragic and mysterious case of JonBenét Ramsey. We have explored the details of the crime, the investigation that followed, and the impact it had on the community and the world. Despite extensive efforts by law enforcement, the case remains unsolved to this day. But the legacy of JonBenét Ramsey lives on, as does the hope that one day justice will be served. I hope this video provided some insight into the case and the complex factors that made it so difficult to solve. If you found it informative and engaging, please consider giving it a thumbs up and subscribing for more content like this. I would love to hear your thoughts and theories about the JonBenét Ramsey case in the comments below. Thank you again for watching, and I look forward to exploring more mysteries and unsolved cases with you in the future.